Hi, welcome back to my channel, and this time we are going to discuss about the deciles for group data. So at the end of this lesson, you should be able to accurately illustrate the deciles of a group data, correctly solve the ith decile of a group data, and correctly interpret the ith decile of a group data. How will you relate the formulas for quartiles and deciles of a group data? Is it possible for distinct deciles to be in the same class? We are going to answer these questions after we have discussed how to compute for the deciles for group data. Now let's recall that deciles are points that divide a ranked data into 10 equal parts. Again, 10 equal parts. However, 10 equal parts yan, pero yung decile natin, we only have D sub 1, D sub 2, hanggang D sub 9. So, 9 deciles lang tayo. Okay? So, this illustrates the 9 deciles in a ranked data. Let's say this is the data set. We have here the lowest score, and this is the highest score, or the highest value. So, we have the first decile denoted by D sub 1. Ibig sabihin yan, 10% of the values are below the first decile. And 90% of the values of the data are above D sub 1. Okay? And so on. And so with the second decile and second decile, andito siya, it means that 20% of the data is below the second decile and 80% of the data is above the second decile. And so on hanggang D sub 9. Now, D sub 5, ito yung pinakagitna, ano? The middle value. It is also equal to the median of the data set. So, it divides the data set into 2 equal parts because for D sub 5, 50% of the data is below it and 50% of the data are above it. Okay, now how do we solve for the deciles of group data? Yung previous lesson natin on deciles, that was solving for the deciles for ungrouped data. That's for the raw data, no? But this time, group data. Paano ba gagawin ito? So first, you have to construct the less than cumulative frequency. So we have, since group data tayo, meron na tayong frequency distribution, no? Distribution table. And so we just have to construct the cumulative, the less than cumulative frequency denoted by this symbol. And then we determine the D sub I class. If we are looking for the first decile, then we are going to determine which class is the first decile. Okay? So for that, we need to solve for I over 10 times. And eto naman, if you have noticed, pareho lang siya ng process sa quartile, wherein we also have to determine the Q sub I class. And for that, yung sa quartile kasi, it's I over 4 times N. Now, for decile, it's I over 10. Ayun lang naman ang kaibahan ng quartile at saka ng decile. Sa quartile, the denominator is 4 because it divides the data set into 4 equal parts. Now, for decile, the denominator is 10 because it divides the data set into 10 equal parts. Okay? And so, again, our N is the total frequency. Then, identify the closest less than cumulative frequency that is greater than the value of I over 10 times N. And that should be the D sub I class. Now, when you have your D sub I class, you can compute for the D sub I using this formula, which is almost the same, ano, dun sa quartile, formula ng quartile ng group data. Ang kaibahan nga lang, yung sabi ko, yung denominator dito. Kasi sa quartile, it's 4. Sa decile, it's 10. Right, so let's have an example. Determine the D sub 3 class or the third decile class of the group data below. So we have here the frequency distribution table where our N is equal to 60. Ang first step natin is to construct the less than cumulative frequency. Okay, supply natin yung values dito. Now remember, from top to bottom, that is highest to lowest, ano. Okay, so we have here 60. So, dapat 60 yung nandito. Okay, we have here 5. The lowest is 5, so 5 yung nandito. We can do it galing dito sa top by subtracting. Pwede rin galing dito sa bottom by adding. Okay, the next frequency. So, let's do here bottom to top. So, we have here 5. 5 plus 8, that would be 13. 13 plus 15, that's 28. 28 plus 17, that would be 15, carry 1, 45. Alright. 45 plus 10, that is 55. And 55 plus 5, that's 60. Very good. And you don't have to get the total, ha? Hindi na kailangan. Alright. Now, second step is to determine the D sub 3 class of the group data. And that is by determining the value of I over 10 times n, wherein our I is equal to 3. So, that is equal to 3 over 10 times yung n natin is 60. Alright? And then we solve for that. So, pwedeng gawin nyo sa calculator, pwede namang mano-mano, ano? So, cancel out yan, magiging 6. 3 times 6, that is equal to 18. Alright? So, we are going to look for the closest less than cumulative frequency that is greater than 18. So, we have here, 13 is not, so we have 28. So, therefore, the class that we are looking for is this class. Okay? So, this contains the D sub 3. Right? 41 to 50. Now, let's have the second example. In the group data below, solve for D sub 5. Ito naman hindi na class, yung D sub 5 na talaga, yung also known as the median or the fifth decile. Ano. So, this is now the frequency distribution table. Unang-una, we solve for or we construct the less than cumulative frequency column of the data. So, it's 150. It should be 150 here. 13 yung dito sa lowest interval. So, that is 13. So, plus lang natin yan. That's 27. 27 plus 21, 48. Okay. 48 plus 25, that's 13. Carry 1, 6, 73. 73 plus 32, that's 5, 105. 105 plus 18, that is 13, carry 1, 2, to 123. 123 plus 16, that should be 9, 139. Okay, tama ba? Alright. And 139 plus 11, so that should be 10, carry 1, 2, okay, 150. Very good. So, this is our less than cumulative frequency. Now, second step is to determine the D sub 5 class by substituting or getting the value of I over 10 times n. And yung I natin, D sub 5, so we have 5 over 10 times yung n natin is 150. Okay, 150. So, cancel out yan. Magiging 15. 5 times 15, that's 75. Okay, 75. Tama ba? So, yeah, dalawang 15 is 30. Apat na 15 is 60. Plus isa pang 15, that's 75. Okay? And so, we are going to look for the closest less than cumulative frequency that is greater than 75. So, we have here 73. Greater than that, 105. So, ito yung closest. And so, it tells us that the class interval that contains the D sub 5 is this class interval 51 to 55. Okay? Now, we have already determined the D sub 5 class. So, let's solve for the fifth decile using this formula. Again, pareho lang sila ng formula ng quartile. Ang kaibahan, 10 lang ito dito. Okay. So, substitution tayo. The lower class boundary is between 51 and 50. So, that's 50.5. Plus, of course, eto na-solve na natin yan. We have 75. Okay, 75 minus yung less than cumulative frequency before the D sub 5 class. So, we have here 105, yung before niyan 73. So, this is minus 73. Divided by yung class frequency niyan, it's 32. Okay, 32. And, multiply ito with the class width. Ang class width naman, 55 minus 51, it's 4. Plus 1, kasi kasali si 51, that's 5. Okay? So, multiply natin ng 5. Now, you can use your calculator in solving that. Okay? So, pwedeng unahin ito and then use parenthesis, ano? Pwede namang 75, unahin yung dito na sa loob ng parenthesis. So, that would be 75 minus 73 divided by 32 times 5 plus 50.5. Okay? And that gives us the value of 50.8125. So, rounding that off into 2 decimal places, that would be 81.81. So, since nag-round off tayo, we are going to use this symbol. Okay? What does it mean to have D sub 5? D sub 5 ito, no? 5th decile yan. What does it mean when D sub 5 equals 50.81? Meaning, 50% of the scores are below 50.81. And 50% of the scores are also above 50.81. Meaning, 50.81 is the middle score. Okay, it's the middle score.